He showed up to our house inspection with a bottle of champagne. He actually brought champagne. While behind the freshly painted walls, he had sealed away cracked insulation cavities, rotting moisture damage, and pipes that had never been properly connected. He stood in our living room and told us we were nervous first-timers who needed to relax and enjoy the moment. That was the last mistake he made. Let me take you back to the beginning, because none of this makes sense without it. My name is not important. What matters is that my partner Lena and I had spent 4 years saving for our first home. Not a dream home, not a mansion, a modest 1970s semi-detached house on a quiet street in a mid-sized German town, with a garden just big enough for a vegetable patch and a dog we did not have yet. We bought it knowing it needed work. The roof was tired, the electrics were old, the bathroom was the color of a hospital ward from 1987. We knew all of that. We had budgeted for it. We had planned for it. What we had not planned for was Marcus. Marcus Brandt, Bauunternehmer, general contractor, a man who introduced himself at the first meeting by handing us a laminated card that said, in bold letters, "Quality you can trust." He had a firm handshake, a slightly too wide smile, and the kind of confidence that reads as competence until it doesn't. He had a van with his logo on the side. He had a website with before and after photos. He had references, though we would later learn those references were 2 cousins and a former business partner who had quietly distanced himself 18 months earlier. We signed the contract in October. Renovation was supposed to take 14 weeks. A new bathroom, new insulation in the exterior walls, replastered and painted interiors, updated plumbing in the kitchen, an upstairs bathroom, and a partial rewiring of the ground floor. The price was not the cheapest quote we received. It was the middle quote. We chose Marcus because he seemed thorough, because he asked detailed questions, because he nodded seriously when we talked about doing things properly. The first 6 weeks were fine. Workers showed up, noise happened, dust happened, progress happened, or at least the appearance of progress. Lena and I were living in her parents' spare room during the renovation, which meant we visited the site every few days rather than every day. We trusted the process. We trusted Marcus. That was our first mistake. The signs started small. Week 7, I noticed the plasterers had moved faster than I expected on the ground floor walls. Not faster in a good way, faster in the way that suggested they had skipped steps. I sent Marcus a message asking whether the insulation inspection had been completed before plastering. He replied within minutes, "All done, no worries, looking great." 3 words that should have been a red flag. Contractors who are doing things properly do not say, "no worries." They say, "Yes, completed on Tuesday, inspector signed off at 14:30, documentation attached." No documentation was attached. I mentioned it to Lena that evening. She was tired. We were both tired. We were sleeping in a single bed in a room decorated with her teenage band posters, and we had not had a proper weekend in 2 months. She said, "Let's see how it looks when it's finished." I said okay, but I did not stop thinking about it. Week 8. I drove over on a Tuesday afternoon, unannounced. The workers were gone. The ground floor was quiet. The new plaster was on the walls, smooth and pale, already partially primed. It looked good, actually. It looked like progress. I walked through each room with my phone out, taking photos the way I had been doing since the first week. This was something I had started doing instinctively, almost obsessively, from day one. Every visit, every room, every angle. Lena thought I was being paranoid. I thought I was being careful. There is a difference. In the kitchen, I noticed a section of wall near the corner where the new plumbing was supposed to have been rerouted. The plaster there was slightly different in texture. Slightly. Not enough that you would notice if you were not looking. I pressed gently on it. It felt fine. But the color was marginally different, and the edge of the plaster line did not match the surrounding area the way it should if everything had been done in the same pass. I took 12 photos of that corner. I did not know yet what I was documenting. I just documented it. Week 10, Marcus called to say they were ahead of schedule and would be ready for the final walkthrough in 3 weeks instead of 4. He sounded pleased with himself. He said the team had worked through a weekend to make up for a delay I had not been informed about. He said we should be proud of the result. He said the word beautiful twice in one sentence. I asked him to send the documentation for the insulation inspection, the plumbing sign-off, and the electrical check. He said he would get those over to me by end of week. End of week came. Nothing arrived. I sent a follow-up message. He replied that his admin was behind and he would sort it first thing Monday. Monday became Wednesday. Wednesday became the following Tuesday. Each time I asked, there was a new reason. The inspector was on holiday. The paperwork was at the office. His admin had changed systems. Each reason was plausible on its own. Together, they formed a pattern. It was during this period that I made a decision I did not tell Marcus about. I called a building engineer, an independent one, not connected to Marcus or to the company we had used for the original survey. His name was Dr. Hoffman, and he specialized in building pathology, which is a very precise way of saying he found the things people tried to hide inside buildings. I explained the situation. I explained my concerns about the speed of the plastering, the missing documentation, the corner in the kitchen. I asked him what he could do. He said he could bring a thermal imaging camera. Thermography. The technology works on the principle that different materials hold and release heat differently. Insulation that has been properly installed creates a consistent thermal signature across a wall. Insulation that is missing, damaged, or incorrectly installed creates cold spots, hot spots, gaps. You cannot see these differences with the naked eye. You cannot feel them by pressing on plaster. But a thermal camera does not lie. I booked Dr. Hoffman for a preliminary visit the following Saturday morning before the final walkthrough, before Marcus knew anything was coming. I did not mention this to anyone except Lena, who by this point had moved from tired skepticism to quiet, focused concern. She had started reading the contract again. She had flagged 4 clauses she wanted to discuss with a lawyer friend. We were no longer just a nervous first-timer couple. We were a nervous first-timer couple who had started taking notes. Dr. Hoffman arrived at 7 in the morning with a hard case the size of a small suitcase and the calm demeanor of someone who had seen everything. He spent 90 minutes moving through the ground floor with his thermal camera while I followed with my phone, filming everything he pointed at. Lena stood at the door of each room and watched. The results were not good. The exterior wall in the living room showed a clear, cold corridor running from floor to ceiling, approximately 60 centimeters wide, precisely where the new insulation was supposed to have been installed. The camera showed nothing there. Not degraded insulation, not thin insulation, nothing. The wall had been replastered over what appeared to be the original uninsulated cavity, which meant either the insulation had never been installed or it had been installed so carelessly that it had shifted and settled, leaving the upper portion entirely empty. The kitchen corner I had photographed in week 8 showed something worse. The thermal image revealed a section of pipe that had not been properly joined. There was a moisture signature, not a flood, not a dramatic leak, a slow, consistent seepage, the kind that would not show on the surface for months, possibly a year, and by the time it did, it would have rotted the interior structure behind the plaster and potentially spread mold through a section of the wall cavity. Dr. Hoffman said, in his measured clinical way, "This is not amateur error. This is deliberate concealment." He said it once. He did not repeat it. He did not need to. I asked him to write it up. All of it. Every thermal image, every measurement, every observation, in a formal written expert report with his professional signature and credentials. He said he would have it ready within 5 days. I told him I needed it in 4. He nodded. I went home that afternoon and sat at Lena's parents' kitchen table and looked at the photos on my phone. 4 months of photos. Hundreds of them. I had documented the walls before plastering. I had documented the plumbing rough-in. I had documented the insulation delivery, including photos of the delivery truck, the product labels, the quantity. I had photographed the workers, the progress, the materials. I had not known I was building a case. I had thought I was being careful. It turned out careful and prepared are the same thing. Marcus called 2 days later to confirm the final walkthrough date. He was cheerful. He talked about how proud he was of the result. He mentioned that the final payment, 40% of the total contract value, would be due on the day of the walkthrough upon satisfactory completion. He used the phrase, satisfactory completion, in a way that suggested he considered the matter already settled. I confirmed the date. I said we were looking forward to it. I did not mention Dr. Hoffman. I did not mention the thermal camera. I did not mention the moisture signature in the kitchen wall or the empty insulation cavity in the living room. I said, we'll see you then. I had also called the bank. We had a construction loan, and the bank had a standard clause in the loan agreement that required a formal completion inspection before releasing the final payment tranche. I had not previously invoked this clause because we had been moving through the renovation smoothly, or so we thought. Now, I called our loan officer and asked whether the bank would be willing to send a representative to the final walkthrough. I explained briefly that we had concerns about the quality of work and that we had commissioned an independent expert report. The loan officer, a careful woman named Frau Berger, said she would attend personally. So on the day of the final walkthrough, the guest list was longer than Marcus expected. He arrived first, which I had not anticipated. He was there when Lena and I pulled up, standing in front of the house in a pressed jacket, holding a bottle of prosecco. He spread his arms when he saw us, the way a person does when they expect to be embraced. "Welcome home," he said. I smiled. Lena smiled. We walked inside. The house looked beautiful. That was the infuriating part. The surfaces were immaculate. The new bathroom gleamed. The painted walls were smooth and even. The kitchen looked like a renovation magazine spread. Marcus walked us through each room with the practiced ease of a man who had done this many times, pointing out details, naming materials, explaining choices. He was performing. He was very good at it. He was mid-sentence about the bathroom tile grout when Dr. Hoffman arrived. Marcus stopped. He looked at Dr. Hoffman. He looked at the hard case. He looked at me. "Who is this?" he asked. "Our independent building expert," I said. "Dr. Hoffman. He'll be joining the walkthrough." Marcus's expression did not collapse. It shifted, a small tightening around the eyes, a recalibration. He extended his hand to Dr. Hoffman and said, "Of course, always good to have a second set of eyes," in the voice of a man who did not mean a single word of it. Frau Berger arrived 4 minutes later. Marcus looked at her, then at me, then back at her. "The bank?" he said. "Standard completion inspection," I said. "It's in the loan agreement." He nodded slowly. The Prosecco bottle was sitting on the kitchen counter. Nobody had opened it. Dr. Hoffman set up his thermal camera in the living room. He did not make a speech. He did not explain himself to Marcus. He simply began scanning the exterior wall. The image appeared on the screen in seconds. The cold corridor, the empty cavity, unmistakable. Marcus looked at the screen. I watched his face. There was a moment, very brief, where something genuine crossed it. Not guilt, not remorse, recognition. He knew exactly what he was looking at because he knew exactly what was behind that wall. Then the performance resumed. "Thermal cameras can be misleading," he said. "Temperature differentials in older structures often create false readings. This is a 1970s building. The thermal mass behaves differently than—" "Mr. Brandt," Dr. Hoffman said, without looking up from the camera, "I have been doing this for 22 years. This is not a false reading." Marcus turned to me. "This is what I mean about first-time homeowners," he said, and his voice had taken on a slightly louder, slightly more performative quality, as if he were addressing an audience rather than a room. "You get nervous, you bring in outside people, you start seeing problems that aren't there. It's completely understandable. But this is what I do? I've been doing this for 15 years. I stand behind my work." I let him finish. Then I opened the folder I had been carrying under my arm since we arrived. It was a physical folder, printed pages, organized with labeled tabs. I had printed everything. The thermal images from Dr. Hoffman's preliminary visit, his formal expert report, signed and dated, my photographs from every site visit, printed in chronological order with dates and timestamps visible, the delivery receipt for the insulation materials, showing the quantity delivered, a calculation, which Dr. Hoffman had helped me prepare, showing the discrepancy between the quantity of insulation delivered and the quantity required to fill the cavity, which suggested that either the materials had not been used or had been used elsewhere. And the message thread with Marcus. Every message, every unanswered request for documentation, every excuse, printed, dated, time-stamped. I placed the folder on the kitchen counter next to the Prosecco. "The insulation in the living room exterior wall was not installed," I said. "Or, if it was installed, it was not installed correctly, and it is not present in the cavity. The thermal imaging from the preliminary visit and from today's inspection are consistent. Dr. Hoffman's report documents this in detail." I turned to the next section. "The plumbing connection in the kitchen corner is not sealed correctly. There is a moisture signature consistent with slow seepage. This was concealed behind plaster. The photos I took during the construction phase show the pipe in that location before plastering, and the state of the joint does not meet the standard required by the contract or by current building code." I closed the folder. "The final payment will not be made today." Marcus stared at me. Then he laughed. It was a short, sharp laugh, the kind that is not actually amused by anything. "You're serious?" he said. "Yes? You're going to withhold payment based on some thermal photos and a report from a guy you hired to find problems? Based on documented defects that were concealed behind finished surfaces in violation of the contract," I said. "Yes." He turned to Frau Berger. "You can see what's happening here. These are first-time buyers who are having cold feet about the final payment. This is a tactic. This happens." Frau Berger had been quiet throughout. She was a small woman with reading glasses and a leather notebook. She looked at Marcus over her glasses. "I have reviewed the expert report," she said. She had received a copy by email the previous evening because I had sent it to her the previous evening. The bank will not release the final payment tranche until the documented defects have been independently verified and remediated to the satisfaction of a certified expert. This is standard procedure under the loan agreement, Clause 14, Subsection 3. Marcus's jaw moved slightly. He was doing a calculation. 40% of the contract value, a number that was not small, a number that represented, among other things, his margin on the job. "This is insane," he said. "This is completely insane. I have done nothing wrong. I have built you a beautiful house. You are looking for a reason to not pay me." "We have photos of the pipe joint before plastering," I said. "We have the thermal images. We have the expert report. We have your messages declining to provide inspection documentation across a 6-week period. We are not looking for a reason. We have the reasons." He pointed at me. "I will take you to court." "That is your right," I said. He looked at Lena. He had not spoken to her directly since the walkthrough began. I think he had assumed, consciously or not, that she was the softer target. "You understand what he's doing here? He's going to cost you months of delay. You want to live in this house. I can see that. You want to be in this house. I can fix whatever small issues there are. I can fix them in a week, and we can all move forward. But withholding payment is not the way to—" "Marcus," Lena said. She said it quietly. He stopped. "We documented the entire build. We have photos from every visit. We have the delivery receipts for every major material. We have your messages. We have the expert report. And we have a lawyer who has already reviewed the contract and confirmed that concealment of structural defects constitutes a material breach." She paused. "We are not nervous first-timers. We are the people who own this house." The room was very quiet. Marcus stood there for a moment with the expression of a man who has just realized that the ground beneath him is not solid. The performance was still running, technically. The pressed jacket, the firm posture, but something behind the eyes had gone very still. He picked up the prosecco from the counter. He looked at it for a second. He put it back down. "I'll be in touch through my solicitor," he said. He left. The door closed behind him. Not slammed. That would have been too honest. It closed with a careful, controlled click, the sound of a man trying to preserve one last shred of composure. Dr. Hoffman continued the inspection for another 40 minutes. He found 2 additional issues: a section of rewired electrical cable that had not been properly terminated in a junction box, but had instead been left with an inadequate connection behind a section of skirting board, and a bathroom tile installation where the waterproofing membrane behind the tiles had been applied inconsistently, leaving a section near the shower tray with inadequate coverage. Both were documented. Both were added to the report. Frau Berger noted everything in her leather notebook. Before she left, she shook my hand and said, "You were very well prepared." It was not a compliment exactly. It was an observation. But I took it as one. The legal process was not fast. I want to be honest about that. It took 11 months. Marcus did engage a solicitor. He made a counterclaim asserting that we had breached the contract by withholding payment without cause. His solicitor sent letters. Our solicitor, who had reviewed everything we had assembled, sent letters back. The thermal images, the expert report, the photographic documentation, the message logs, the delivery receipts, and the calculation of material discrepancy formed the core of our position. It was a strong position. Marcus's solicitor clearly understood this because the counterclaim was withdrawn after the 3rd exchange of correspondence. The final outcome? Marcus was required to remediate all documented defects at his own cost. An independent contractor, appointed through the court process, oversaw the remediation work. The living room wall was opened. The insulation cavity was empty, not partially filled. Empty. The insulation materials we had paid for, a quantity sufficient to fill the cavity, had never been installed. Where they had gone was not our legal concern, though we had our suspicions. The kitchen pipe was repaired. The electrical termination was corrected. The bathroom waterproofing was redone. Total remediation cost was assessed at a figure that exceeded the final payment we had withheld. Marcus also lost the 2 follow-on contracts he had been awarded in our area during the period of the dispute. Word moves in communities. The building trade is not a large world. When the court documentation became a matter of public record, which it did, 2 other clients who had used Marcus in the previous 3 years contacted a consumer advice organization. One of them had been experiencing unexplained damp in a wall that had been renovated by Marcus's company. An inspection found a similar pattern. The Quality You Can Trust van was parked outside his office for several months without moving. I drove past it once, not intentionally, just on a route I happened to take. The logo was starting to peel at one corner. I did not feel triumphant. I want to be clear about that. I felt something more complicated, which was the particular exhaustion of having been right about something you wished you had been wrong about. We had wanted to trust Marcus. We had wanted the renovation to go smoothly. We had wanted to walk into our house on completion day and open that bottle of prosecco and feel the way you are supposed to feel when you have finished building something. Instead, we had spent 11 months in a legal process while living in a house with a wall that had been opened and temporarily boarded up, and a kitchen that smelled faintly of construction dust, and a bathroom we were afraid to use fully until the waterproofing had been independently certified. But here's the thing. We did move in, eventually. We moved in on a Saturday in March, 14 months after the original completion date. The house was not finished in the way Marcus had left it. It was finished in the way we had finished it, slowly, carefully, with a new contractor we had found through a personal recommendation from Dr. Hoffman, a quiet man named Stefan, who showed up on time, answered questions directly, provided documentation without being asked, and never once used the word beautiful to describe his own work. Stefan's company did the insulation properly. They did the plumbing properly. They did the electrical work properly. We watched every stage. We photographed every stage. Not out of paranoia this time, out of habit. Out of the understanding that a home is not something you hand to someone else and trust blindly. It is something you participate in building, even if you are not the one holding the tools. On the day we actually moved in, Lena found the bottle of prosecco. Marcus had left it on the kitchen counter when he walked out. We had put it in a bag and forgotten about it. She held it up. "What do you want to do with this?" she asked. I thought about it for a moment. "Open it," I said. So we did. We stood in the kitchen of our finished, properly insulated, correctly plumbed, independently certified house, and we drank Marcus's prosecco out of the only two glasses we had unpacked. They were mismatched. One was a proper champagne flute. One was a short water glass. It did not matter. The house was warm. Properly warm, the way a house is warm when the walls are actually insulated. Outside, it was cold and gray, and the garden was muddy, and we had approximately 40 boxes still to unpack, and a dog we still did not have. Lena looked at me over her water glass of prosecco. "We should get a dog," she said. "Yes," I said. We stood there in the kitchen we had fought for, in the warmth that was actually there behind the walls, real and verified and documented, and we drank to it. Here is what I know now that I did not know when we started. A contractor who is doing good work does not avoid documentation. He provides it, he is proud of it, he invites inspection because inspection confirms what he already knows is true. The contractor who waves off your questions, who says, "No worries," who performs confidence instead of demonstrating competence, who brings prosecco to a walkthrough as if celebration is a substitute for evidence. That contractor is not confident. He is afraid. He is afraid because he knows what is behind the walls. Document everything. Not because you expect to be betrayed, because documentation is the only language that matters when trust has been broken. Photographs, messages, receipts, dates, names, all of it. A phone full of boring construction photos is worth more than a signed contract if the signed contract is being ignored. And find your Dr. Hoffman before you need him. Because by the time you need him, you will need him urgently, and urgency is expensive. The thermal camera does not lie. That is perhaps the most important thing. Behind every smooth surface, behind every freshly painted wall, behind every confident smile and every bottle of prosecco, there's the truth of what was actually done. And the truth has a temperature. It shows up in the dark. It cannot be plastered over indefinitely. Marcus knew that. He just thought we didn't. He was wrong about that. We were wrong about trusting him, but we were right about everything else. And in the end, the house is standing, and it is warm, and it is ours. And every wall in it has been seen, measured, documented, and certified. That is worth more than champagne. That is worth more than almost anything. The dog's name is Bao. It means construction in German. We thought that was appropriate. He digs up the vegetable patch regularly and shows no remorse whatsoever. We find this very relatable. We are doing fine.